online. Okay, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank INCIBE for the invitation and the framework of the 16th International edition of Cybersecurity. I'm thrilled to be back in León and remember my professional experience of more than 10 years, where I was the responsible for INTECO. Let's make a summarize of what these last 20 years have been, and I would like to rely on the invited guests for them to explain to us their experience throughout this journey, throughout this timeline that we will see on the screen. We have 3 excellent speakers. One of them joined online. You cannot see him on stage, but online. I'm going to introduce him, Enrique Martínez, who was the creator, let's say, of INTECO, first Director General. Currently, and since July 2018, is the President of SEGITTUR, Tourist Innovation Institution. He has a degree in political science and sociology. He has many master's degrees in public administration. He is also the chairman of the Standardization or Normalization Center since 2014, and his long professional experience in the public sector. And he was also the director of the National Observatory of Telecommunication and Society of Information, CONICET. We also have, on my left, Elena García, who is telecommunications engineer by the University of Cantabria. He has many certifications in cybersecurity, PMP, project manager, etc. And she's the responsible for security of information in INDRA, one of the leading companies in Spain. She's had this position since 2018, and before that, for 11 years, she's been here at what was INTECO, having different positions at INTECO. Just to mention only one of them, she was the coordinator of the Internet Users Coordination Office. And on my right, we have Marcos Gómez, who has a degree in mathematics by University Complutense. He has a master's degree and many other certifications in cybersecurity. Since 2006, he is the deputy director of INCIBE. He's also had different positions with different names, actually. And those who sit around this table, he has been in for 20 years. He's the only one who have been around for 20 years. And we also have, as a support, a timeline. I don't know if we can see that on the screen or not, but yes, here we are. So this is a timeline, and you can see the main milestones of these 20 years. And then we are going to break them down in different scenarios or important moments, let's say. So for the first milestone or first moment, the cyber beginning of was INTECO was, and the predecessor, CATA, the Early Warning Center for Antivirus. And to talk about this, I would like my friend and colleague, Enrique Martínez. Enrique, I think you are somewhere around. Yes, I'm virtually here, but I am here. So I'm delighted to talk about the cyber beginnings. So please tell us something. How was everything back then? We there was a team that joined for the first time. The success of this initiative was due to the team that was created by Red.net. I was the director of the observatory, as someone mentioned, and I was also part of the office that created the plan that became the Avanza plan later on. So we had a knowledge of the sector. So President Zapatero, who launched this initiative, asked us to foster all this. And one of the keys is cybersecurity, and Marcos was responsible for Red.es at the time. So the beginning, and when Jesus Posada was the minister, a journalist, and unfortunately I don't remember his name, said to us, it's good for you to let people know there is a virus for precaution. There was a vaccine that was called at the time, and Red.es took care of that, and Marcos took care of that personally, and one of the axes of INTECO was precisely that, cybersecurity. As I said before, and many of the previous speakers mentioned this, the idea was to decentralize competences to create economic development, and we proved as something possible. That was a crisis, but it was possible to create a new economic sector by developing opportunities, especially in a place where ecosystems coexist. That was the origin, both of CATA, thanks to the support of Minister Posada, and INTECO for cybersecurity. And this is when we took CATA and brought it to León, with the support of Marcos, right? Yes. So CATA, Red.es, and then they moved it to León.
I sometimes think if it was somebody else who had that responsibility at the time, they would have had to receive your kind invitation to come to León. And I remember, by way of anecdote, that you were having a coffee behind the cathedral and you said, it's such a beautiful sky, Marcos, you have to come here, you have to come to León. And I came here and I was charmed by you and by the actual experience, which is a beautiful experience where this project created and ended up being one of the largest cybersecurity initiatives nationwide. And it is a pioneering activity, these antivirus alert centers, something which you asked month after month, how many antennas do we have, Marcos? How many do you have already? And I said, well, we have many already. This was cooperation with the anti-malware, antivirus researchers at the time, which allowed us to have the first alerts. This was called at the time the early antivirus alert. We had 3 people, only 3 people in the team. They all came to León. They were brave enough to make it, and they came and were part of the team. It was a time where you, Manuel Escalante, as Director of Operations and later General Director, we actually knew that everything was possible and that working here in León really made sense. Fantastic. Well, let's change the subject a little bit and let's move on to a second stage, if you want. I'm not sure if you can see the second or the next slide. This slide is called Consideration of INTECO. We still have INTECO time. We're still not at INCIBE as such, and this is something that I lived and witnessed in these last few years, and I would like to highlight some things. For instance, the team we had at INTECO lived very difficult times, because if you remember, back in 2008 we had the big economic crisis and we were all affected by that situation. So just to mention, I would say that at that time it was a time when we did a strategic plan at INTECO, and that was based on the concept of confidence in the information security But we had a broader concept at the time. We talked about society of information as being trustworthy if it was safe and secure and accessible for everyone, and also if we could provide quality services. This is how we created the early INTECO activities that Enrique Martínez referred to earlier. Another element that we highlighted back then was internalization. We changed the name to ENISE. ENISE became national encounter of the cybersecurity industry in Spain, and we changed that to international encounter. This was one of the steps we took, and another one was the celebration coinciding with the Spanish presidency of the EU in 2010, and in 2023 we will have another presidency of Spain. This was called Trust in Information Society. So the fundamental topic was that trust, and at the time INTECO actually did achieve the first European projects. I remember a very interesting project that was done with the police forces to track down and crack down on paedophile activities, pedophiles on the internet. And another aspect that I would like to highlight from this stage, before I give the floor to Elena to tell us a little bit more about the OSI, it's the fact that as part of this cooperation, these PPPs and the cooperation with different businesses, was to promote a more innovative society, which was called Cybersecurity in the information sector. This step provided a more legal body. So as part of these lines of action, we had to make some more efforts, and important efforts, around efficiency, and we had to work in different areas with Interprefer, and well, this is something that Elena will refer to. Well, yes, I think the actual seed of the activities were already set, and I think we were lucky to have somebody like Marcos with us, being part of the team, looking at the evolution, where we should be heading, where we should go, because sometimes you have to adapt for different needs. And he summarized it very nicely. When we started, back at the time, cybersecurity did not take into account the need, the real need of security of the businesses, and we hadn't reached that level that we have reached today. So we had the challenge and the opportunity to work and to evolve, and to make sure that we would evolve in all the areas that needs to be developed when we talk about information security. We had to develop a whole range of technology, the antennas. Were not there at the time, and we had again to adapt to the needs. And also when it comes to the cooperation and to people, I think we are lucky enough to have today with us very many professionals who were there from the onset by providing services and adapting to the needs of the citizens. Please, Marcos and Víctor, allow me to say that it is sad that we do not have Enrique. And one of the first lines of work that we opened at the CATA was the fight and the coordination against electronic fraud. Back then, when we started talking about electronic fraud, banks in Spain did not even want to hear about it, because they would never recognize that phishing was there. And I think we are all aware that day after day, not only banks but also any sort of business do talk about protecting their businesses. This is the best effective way to protect them from a global problem, which is not a problem of the actual citizen. As citizens, we are exposed to risk, and when these risks are materialized, we are jeopardized. So that's why we created the office to provide services directly to the citizens, and we had the challenge to explain to these citizens that they needed security. Internet security, this is something that they could not quite understand. They thought it had to do with viruses. Many of us, even at home, we found it difficult to explain what we were doing at the time. So we had a challenge to make the messages evolve, to get the message across, and to make everybody aware and do their bit. That was the first step. And it is true that even back then we made available a hotline which was not as powerful as the current number 017, but which did contribute to the greater reach of the project. Enrique, we have you on screen now. Would you like to add something? Yes, well, in line with what Elena said, having Elena and Marcos sitting there, having that wonderful team created, and having worked for and with so many valuable people is a great asset that we have in the organization. But as Elena said, apart from having antennas and the full equipment, we did something very important. We changed the diagnosis on cybersecurity at a time where the discourse around viruses was dominant. We had to use 43 search engines, and we ran different questions to the users, and we discovered that there were no problems with viruses, that we have rather Trojans, and that these were the real issue. We also realized that we had some 4,000 unique events. So we changed the discourse in the industry, and we could recognize cybersecurity problems, and we managed to change things in the banking sector with their cooperation. They were increasingly working with us, and we created a banking network that would inform people about what was going on. We could pass the message through, and we could share those risks. And we also innovated in the services, as Elena pointed out. So I think, in short, we did great work because we had a solid team in place. We could innovate in the services we provided, and we improved diagnosis on the actual real problems in the country. Carlos, would you like to add anything? Well, I think that's it, basically, nothing more to add. Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to other issues. Maybe we can have the third slide on screen, which is the lap, the step towards INCIBE. Yes, after that national strategy for cybersecurity, we are in 2013, we decided to change the name of INTECO and replace it with INCIBE, and having the same team working around software quality, now working directly on cybersecurity, we witnessed all this that we can see on the screen, which you can provide more details about, Enrique. Well, shall I? I think it actually speaks for itself, the different initiatives of the cyber exercises, the initiatives related to minors, putting the safe internet for kids at the very core of what we did, working with the businesses and their objectives, something which I remember when I was working at the time, there was a term, cyber resilience, which was not very much in use. People were wondering what was the resilience all about, and now we have a means to measure that cyber resilience. And so the progress made has been absolutely spectacular, I must say. I'm not sure whether you'd like to mention something. Well, there is another element, and that's the cooperation with the Organization of American States in the different cyber exercises, but you may want to comment also on the cooperation on things related to the security forces and the cooperation with the Spanish Ministry of the Interior, the Home Office. Well, yes, in 2013 we signed the first agreement with the colleagues at the Critical Infrastructures Office, and we had good relationships with the Organization of American States due to our natural incline towards our Spanish-speaking counterparts. And here we had a series of exercises with different critical service operators in cooperation with the Spanish Ministry of the Interior, where more than half of these operators are usually IBEX 35 companies. So we're talking about large enterprises which were starting to train on cybersecurity. So the cooperation together with the Organization of American States and the cooperation around flat capture. We have more than 80 countries participating, more than 800 experts from 35 companies. We measure cyber resilience. We start from a very well-defined structure, which actually became light cyber resilience measuring with 47 indicators that allow us to test and to see what's going on and to know about cyber resilience. And then finally we close the loop with the Center for the Protection of Minors through INCIBE and the Secretary of State with different networks and with the creation of specific services for the micro businesses and SMEs with the Protege tu Empresa, Protect Your Business scheme. We provided cross-cutting support. Added to this is the early alerts that we have already spoken about. Then working again with the minors, with the underage community, with the parents, and also the Protege tu Empresa, Protect Your Business initiative. If we may, maybe, yes, well, if I may, I would like to add something. Let's not forget that somebody who was absolutely paramount back then was Víctor Sotelo, and I would like to thank him for his determination, where at a time of economic crisis, he decided to increase the budget and the number of people working at INTECO, later INCIBE. And he provided great institutional support by clarifying the competencies. Yes, we must recognize that. Also, what you mentioned before, what we understood that INTECO had to do at the beginning, and why it would provide a service for a trustworthy digital world. And one of the challenges was to focus and to make progress on this issue, because we don't have time to, and we cannot actually afford to lose our focus. And we want to work on cybersecurity, and we knew that, we had to focus our services on that area. And I loved the former slide, because it actually depicts what businesses need, what large companies need. The companies that are working around the cybersecurity, they need to be measured, they need to be helped to assess objectively how good they are actually doing. Because we are often asked, how do you know how good you are? It is actually better if we have somebody coming from outside and tell us how well we are performing. We know that the message has to be different, the service is different, the demand is different. So training and working with the minor, to me this is paramount, and we have the necessary means and resources and budget, and we need to become more specialized in our services. Well, moving on to the last scenario. I'm sorry, maybe I took too much time. Yes, well, we're running out of time, that's the only thing. Yes, we have to move on to the conclusions, Victor. Well, just a couple of conclusions, if I may. One In these last 20 years that we have seen, let's talk about the number of people. I have some information that says that INTECO was born with how many people? 12. Well, it actually was created with only one person, i.e. myself, then Royan and myself, and then some more were added. And how many do we have now? More than 130 people, and we are in the process of reaching 180 by the end of the year. Okay, and then something else is the budget. What was the budget in the early days, Marco? 2 million euros. And now the challenge is to spend and to make the best use, the most efficient use of the funds coming from the Recovery, Transformation and Resilience Plan.